I had grown up in an era when we thought of terrorist groups as fairly bounded, narrowly focused entities with a certain number of people in them, and that if you were able to attrit those people or to decapitate it, that you would essentially cause the problem to stop. At the beginning of the war against al-Qaeda, as Bruce knows very well, we started with a decapitation strategy. We actually had a strategy that was called 2+7, and that was Osama bin Laden, Ayman al-Zawahiri, the next 7, and if we could decapitate those, the organization would collapse. In reality, that doesn't usually happen. As I tongue-in-cheek tell people, if you take out the top 2 people in any organization we're a part of, does it actually collapse? In some cases, I'd argue it gets stronger. I used to say that in the Pentagon.
It's not a recommendation.
Yeah. I used to say that in the Pentagon, and of course everybody would head nod. But the reality is, if you have a very bounded organization of, X number of people, you go after them and you just sort of the deck of cards idea, you take them off and you eliminate them, problem solved. That doesn't apply to a networked enemy. And if you think of what a big organization, a networked terrorist group has to do, if you see a car bomb go off in Baghdad against a target, somebody had to have chosen the target, somebody had to have built the car bomb, somebody had to have assembled all the components to the car bomb, somebody had to find somebody to place the car bomb, and if it was going to be driven, had to find a suicide bomber. Somebody had to then make that car bomb worthwhile. And so what I mean by worthwhile is typically they would film it, and they would immediately put that film out so that they got much greater value out of the explosion. So if you start to think of all these, you're talking about leadership at the top, command and control, communications, fairly rapid, logistics, sometimes very, very significant amount of logistics. When you have 14 car bombs a day going off in Baghdad, it's a big logistic chain. You're talking about recruiting, assessing, training, and moving people into position. So you got a human resources part of this thing. You're talking about security elements that are doing your counter intelligence work to make sure you're not penetrated. I mean, it's a big organization that's got all the functions of a very complex organism. To do that, it becomes this living organization that has to operate, but it becomes extraordinarily effective because there's a reach everywhere. And so to defeat that, if you think, well, all I've got to do is get Mr. Big, you miss the point. You're just not going to have the effect you think.